Georgia, thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. It was quite a busy weekend in terms of weather systems that we did have and potential severe weather risk and winter weather impacts that we very luckily did avoid the worst of. And as we went into this morning, your weather impact alert was still in place for potential areas of some slick roads, some areas of some black ice. And we were really concerned about those bridges, those overpasses, maybe some shaded areas. But we talked with our local EMA officials. As of right now, we have still not heard any reports of any slick conditions out and about on the roads, even in areas that dip down into the upper 20s for their temperatures this morning. So we're going to assume no news is good news on that front, and your weather impact alert has finally come to a conclusion. But I did want to share this graphic with you, which the National Weather Service did share with us as of this morning. This is a preliminary report, which means this is kind of just the first look at our ice totals that we did see all across the state of Georgia. And where you are seeing the orange and the red colors, those are going to be your higher amounts. So your higher accumulations closer to around 1/10 of an inch, up to 1/4 of an inch, maybe even up to about 1/2 inch. So let's zoom in on this graphic. And these circled black areas where the black lines you do see, that's where we're lacking some reports right now. So they're still getting some reports coming in north and northwestern Georgia and over here along the I-20 corridor and in kind of northeastern central Georgia, making its way towards Augusta. So if you do have any reports that you want to share with the National Weather Service, find a way to reach out and send them those ice totals. But right now it does look like we didn't see anything in the way of accumulation of ice down here in central Georgia. But first and foremost, let's focus on these areas up closer to the I-85 corridor, getting up into Lake Lanier and then eventually up into the North Georgia mountains. Some of the highest totals that we have seen are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1/2 inch. I think I have seen some reports in the National Weather Service chat of about 1/4 of an or 3/4 of an inch of some ice accumulation. So that going to be found in the north and northeastern corner of the state as you make your way down towards the metro Atlanta area. This is where you're starting to get into the territory, maybe some areas that did have some problematic ice, but I do anticipate that a lot of that is going to try to melt a little bit as we go throughout today, but that is the concern up there. Down here in central Georgia, maybe northernmost portions of Jasper, Putnam, and Hancock counties saw something in the way of maybe about 1/10 or 2 of an inch of ice at the very most, but we have not received really many reports from EMA directors. If that did happen, it's not causing any problems on the roads or as you make your way out and about. But these are also kind of areas in this yellow shade that you're just getting above zero, maybe about 1/100th of an inch. These are simply the areas that did see some form of a wintry mix throughout yesterday morning and something in the way of a freezing nature or freezing rain nature, or maybe something in the way of sleet showers. So it is kind of almost directly parallel to the I-75 South corridor, getting into I-75, 475 here in Macon, and then going just on the northern side of I-16 in areas as far down as northern Lawrence County and going farther and farther down the Oconee River. Did we see anything in the way of a wintry mix in those areas? We very possibly could have, but it didn't accumulate to anything and it didn't have any implications here in central Georgia. So we were very thankful for that. But the next image I do want to show you, this isn't a current image. This was as of yesterday afternoon, right at around 4:04 p.m. You can see this is a very active satellite and radar picture where, number one, I want to turn your attention to the I-20 corridor. So this northern edge of this line of rain, as you get out of central Georgia, it transitioned into more of a wintry mix. We had some sleet showers and even maybe a mix with some freezing rain in north and northeast central Georgia yesterday afternoon. But as you went farther and farther down to the south, these numbers crept farther and farther above freezing temperatures. So we had a very large battleground between the wedge up in northeast Georgia and down in south and southwest Georgia and central Georgia, for that matter of fact. We had a very warm and a very humid air mass that was surging up to the north. So we see severe thunderstorm warnings down here just in areas to the southwest of Chris County, down to the south of Sumter County, and just below this screen, I was taking a look at the radar yesterday when I made my way home. There were our fair share of some tornado-warned storms down in southwest Georgia, closer to the Albany area. So we definitely dodged a bullet, but this is an area of about roughly 100 miles, maybe just over 100 miles, kind of around the Lake Oconee area, just south of I-20 in northern Putnam County, all the way down to Lake Blackshear, getting into areas like Lee County, Sumter County, all the way down into Turner County. That is going to be a spread of about 100 miles between a severe thunderstorm warning and a wintry mix. something that I never thought I would see encompassing both areas of central Georgia. We have talked about how the wedge has created quite the temperature difference in areas of central Georgia before. Maybe some areas in the 40s up here to the north, maybe hovering in the 70s farther down to the south. But the temperature spread between north and northeast Georgia yesterday into down in south and southwest Georgia, the temperature difference was in the neighborhood of roughly 40 to maybe even 45 degrees. We were below freezing up in areas like Athens up there behind the banner, and it was down in the mid 70s in areas to the southwest of Cordele. But we did receive our fair share of rain yesterday, so let's go over some of those preliminary rainfall totals. And this is what we were concerned about, where some standing bodies of water, maybe up to 1 inch, 2, or even close to 3 inches in some isolated pockets, that is still going to be left standing on the ground because that rain did fall during the late afternoon to the early evening time frame. But even after the rain finally got out of here, we didn't receive any peaks of sunshine. So it was going to take a little bit longer for all that water at the surface to dry up. And we were looking at the arrival of that colder and drier air from the north and the northwest. Well, those areas up to the north and the northwest of central Georgia, they just didn't receive as much rain as areas farther down to the south as you go down I-75, 1.1 inches of rain, pretty close to the total that we did get at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. And even these flashes of yellow and orange are going to indicate totals up to 2, maybe even 3 inches in nature in a couple of isolated spots across Dooley County, Sumter County, down to Chris County, Pulaski, Bleckley, and Twiggs County. And then you will see the green shade and kind of surrounding those colors, and those are going to be your totals in between 1 and 2 inches. But the main takeaway with this graphic is we found more rain farther down to the south in central Georgia, which is going to be a good thing for our drought monitor, but also those areas up to the north and the northwest that did get below freezing this morning. That was paired up along with some clearing in the cloud cover and some peaks of sunshine pretty early in the morning hours, and they had a lot less standing water that was on the ground. So kind of a best case scenario, and probably the reason why we haven't seen anything in the way of reports of black ice or some slick surfaces. So let's go over your rainfall graphic. We're kind of getting back to our regular scheduled programming on this extended forecast now. For the month of January so far, 2.3 inches of rain. So we are still a good deal off of average of just over 4 inches of rainfall, but we did have a pretty substantial amount right here yesterday on the 25th. Pretty close to about 1 inch of rain. So we were well down into the 1 inch category before we finally made the way up to around 2¼ inches of rain, but still a ways to go before we get to that average mark, and definitely not going to get close to that record back in 1925. And something we did get as of last week, but we were so caught up in the potential for winter weather, then the severe weather, and of course what was in store this morning, we haven't thought to really show you this. So here's the latest update of the drought monitor, which hasn't changed too much. Most areas still remain in a severe drought. Areas in north central Georgia, kind of these same exact areas that we did outline the potential for some wintry weather. They're in a moderate drought, but we also see another patch of a severe drought creeping down into Hancock County. And now we see some more red areas popping up. So an area of an extreme drought closer over to Columbus, Georgia, back over into eastern Alabama, and then getting into east and southeast Georgia, going all the way close to the Savannah area, but areas just to our southeastern periphery. So getting close to Baxley, Georgia, Appling County, maybe stretching all the way over to Coffee County on the western end. That is where we see an extreme drought. So extreme drought just means that those areas need the rain a whole lot more than we do in central Georgia, but areas in a severe drought, this orange shade, we definitely need more rain than areas up to the north in that moderate drought, which is exactly what we just saw on our 24-hour rainfall graphic. Even some of those isolated pockets of close to 3 inches of rain, that's going to do a good job at hopefully maybe improving some of these severe drought conditions as we get into the update of the drought monitor this week. We will take all the data as of tomorrow, and then we will get into Thursday. We'll get the new release of the drought monitor. Hopefully some of that rain will provide some alleviation. So not all a bad thing this weekend. Honestly, just going with your weekend forecast that was very complex, a lot of moving pieces, it really did end up being a best case scenario. We were really in the sweet spot. We were right below the wintry weather impacts, and we were right to the north and northeast of seeing something in the way of some severe thunderstorms and some even tornado warned storms. We actually have had a couple of comments, maybe some people reporting some gusts that have caused some damage down in south and southwest central Georgia. We didn't see anything indicating anything in the way of rotation, but we did see a lot of straight line winds associated with that band of heavy rain that came through. So if you do have some damage, that's very likely where it came from, not in the way of a potential spin-up tornado, which we did have the highlighted risk for, but very thankfully didn't see any of those warnings pop up. So here's a look at your headlines. Potential slick spots on the roads. Now that we're heading into the middle of your Monday afternoon, I don't think that's going to be a risk anymore. But then we are now going to be the coldest we have been so far in the winter season. And we're talking about actual temperatures, and we are also talking about those feels like temperatures, and that cold is going to stay all week. Not going to necessarily be as cold as today and what we have in store for your Tuesday for the rest of the week, but we are going to be well below average. In fact, I only have one day that we're forecasted to actually hit that 50-degree mark. So a walk around the quad looks completely different than it did just about 3 hours ago. Deep blue color in the sky, not a single cloud in sight. So obviously I got to change that icon over there in Perry. But here's a look at the current number, 36 degrees. Pretty similar number to what we've seen down in West Houston County all morning long. But the feels like number is what you really want to know, because take a look at your Perry sky cam right here. The flags continue to wave from right to left, indicating that there is a northerly component to your winds. We are facing out over towards the west from this camera point view, so we are basically seeing almost a directly northern wind, maybe a little bit of a northwesterly component, hence why you see northwesterly breeze at 17 miles per hour. That's rather gusty right there, and that's just talking about the sustained winds. So let's talk about your temperatures all across the United States. We're finally not seeing that warm patch of air that was present kind of along the northern or the Gulf Coast of the United States, and then that eventually did move out of the picture. That's what surged up into central Georgia, at least in our southernmost counties yesterday. The wedge setup is not taking place anymore, and now most of the eastern United States is just rather chilly. It is still 0 degrees over in Kansas City, a couple of single-digit values, 2 degrees in Indianapolis, 5 in St. Louis, moving down into the teens, eventually the 20s, and now somewhere in the mid-30s down here in central Georgia, 30 degrees over in Montgomery, 37 in Panama City. Panama City actually feeling the chill with this. 30 in New Orleans, even a 28 over in Houston. We are warmer than Houston, Texas, and not often that we can really say that. 55 in Jacksonville, and still the state of Florida is holding on to that warm air. Florida was just kind of the exception with all of this winter weather we did have over the last couple of days. They were not in any form of any wintry weather potential impacts, but I imagine they did get some of that rain that did pass through yesterday and in the form of some thunderstorms. Here in the state of Georgia, colder air is filtering in from northwest down to the southeast. So that's why Huntsville and Starkville are going to be your coldest temperatures on this map compared to the mid and upper 20s you see in Meridian, Birmingham, up in Rome, another 29 in Atlanta. As you go down to Macon, down to the southeast, a little bit warmer than those values, 36, 32 in Columbus, 30 over in Montgomery, and then holding on to some 40s and some low 50s down here in southeastern Georgia. Brunswick at 52, 55 in Jacksonville, and then going down to a 41 all the way over there in Valdosta. So still hovering at freezing temperature in Thomaston and in Monticello. Everyone else has gotten the climb back above that freezing temperature mark. So anything that did possibly freeze on the ground in the form of that black ice is very likely going to continue to melt, even though, or while we also will be pairing it up with plenty of sunshine right now. I was going to say, even though we still have the cloud cover present, but that's not the case anymore. Low 30s, mid 30s, transitioning into some upper 30s and some low 40s farther down to the south and the southeast. And would you believe me if I told you that the winds are going to get even gustier throughout this afternoon? This patch of red, maybe even some areas of pink, going to continue to push down into central Georgia. We're already seeing some gusts up to 30 miles per hour. 30 mile per hour gusts in Milledgeville, 33 mile per hour gusts here in Macon. I was thinking that we actually might even reach wind advisory criteria, which is where you start to get some wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Nonetheless, it's a very dry environment, it's a very cold environment, and a very windy environment. So along with that, haven't seen anything in the way of a fire danger statement throughout today, but I do imagine that burning is going to be highly discouraged, especially with how windy of conditions that we are continuing to have. And those winds just add extra insult to injury in terms of what it does feel like outside. Still feeling like the low 20s, some mid 20s. We're really scattered about the 20s for the most part, but it does look like a couple areas are at least creeping back into the low 30s. We only have a handful of areas that are actually feeling above freezing temperature, and I imagine most of those today are going to be farther down to the south and the southeast. But those numbers are going to kind of stay around where they are because that colder air mass just continues to creep in from northwest down to southeast. So eventually our southeasternmost counties are going to feel some of that colder air mass as well. But finally, we are seeing that cloud cover get out of the picture. We finally get the rain out of the picture sometime around 3 to 4 a.m. It actually lasted a little bit longer than we were anticipating. We were thinking it was going to be gone maybe closer to the midnight hour, but that rain held on a little bit longer, so our clouds hung on a little bit longer into this morning, but they did eventually start to break apart as we got into the 8 a.m. hour and made our way into around 9 a.m. as well. Satellite and radar, maybe something is going on with it, or maybe we're just not seeing that much in the way of rain anymore because I thought it would pop up some cloud cover and rain to the south and the southeast. But overall, it's a quiet picture in the state of Georgia now, just going to be a story of cold and dry air. And here's what's left of your winter storm. It is currently present up in the New England portion of the country, sending steady snow showers to areas like eastern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and getting into the southern portion of Maine. And that is kind of where we did see our winter weather alerts end. They went all the way up into the northern edge of Maine, right over here on the edge of Canada, and then we can see some of those snow showers getting over to the Halifax area, getting over into Newfoundland. So of course this is a very widespread system, and still some residual snow showers that we're seeing along the Appalachian Mountains, even back over to the west of them, some around Nashville, getting into southern Tennessee, northern Alabama, and making their way up the Appalachians. More than likely some of those higher elevations that are holding on to a bit of moisture, some steady snow showers just continue to fall. So yesterday's almanac, it was mighty chilly. 46 degrees was your high temperature, but this was in the Macon area. If you live down in Cordele, 46 was obviously not your high temperature. You got closer to the 70-degree mark. And if you live to the north of Macon, you didn't get this high. You probably saw some temperatures scattered about the 30s in the afternoon. But here in Macon, 46, good enough for 14 degrees below average, and 32 in the morning hours. That was 4 degrees below your average low of 36 degrees. So nowhere near that record of 82 and nowhere near that record low of 13 degrees back in 2014. If we actually had that temperature present yesterday morning, 13 degrees, we would have had widespread snow showers here in the central Georgia area for the second consecutive Sunday. But obviously we didn't see really much in the way of anything in the way of wintry weather. And I did already mention we got close to around an inch of rainfall, so year departure of rain now minus 1.16 inches. So we are getting back closer to the 1 inch mark, below where we should be. Like I said, we're going to have plenty of weather makers come in over the next couple of months that will dump pretty substantial amounts of rain on us, like we did see with that line of showers and thunderstorms as of yesterday. Sunrise back to 7:33. I think last time I checked it, it was about 7:36. And then we getting into sunset, we actually finally got our first 6 p.m. sunset once again. I believe today is the 26th of January, so the first 6 p.m. sunset would have been yesterday evening. So we are back kind of a little bit more according to schedule, and that sunset will continue to get later and later. But for your January high temperatures, believe it or not, before we kicked off this very cold spell at the end of last week, 2 slightly above average days. High temperatures in the low 60s, both Thursday and Friday, and then obviously 79 degrees, that would be above average. Looks like I just forgot to change that number. High temperature on Saturday, I do believe, was somewhere, I think it was 49 degrees. So I think I just typed in the wrong number right there. It's been a long last 3 days, folks. Hopefully you can give me a little bit of grace, but I can confirm that Saturday afternoon was definitely a below average day because we now add 2 below average days to the tally and 2 above average days to the tally. But I imagine as we wrap up January over the course of this week, we're going to have nothing but below average days. Frigid and windy for your Monday afternoon forecast. Feels like numbers in the low 30s compared to your high temperature in the mid 40s, 45 degrees. So 45 is already 15 degrees below average for this time of year. That is already a cold enough afternoon. When you pair it up with a gust up to 30, maybe even 35 miles per hour in a few select spots, that feels like number is going to struggle to get above freezing temperature. So that's what you see, and the meteorogram actually doesn't even get up to 45 degrees. So if we undershoot my high temperature, it's going to feel even colder than that. then 39 degrees down into the mid 30s as we go into 6 p.m. And those numbers are going to drop quite a lot as we go into the future and go into tomorrow morning, which I am kind of dreading showing you the feels like temperatures for tomorrow morning, but I want you to stay prepared nonetheless. Wind chill values, like I said, struggling to get above 32 degrees this afternoon and dropping back down into the 20s and already in the upper teens. These were our wind chill values as of this morning at the very lowest, and we are seeing those values at 11 p.m. and midnight already. So you can bet that those numbers are going to continue to get even lower than that. So before we talk about the specifics with your numbers, let's go ahead and talk about Futureview, where we're going to see nothing but sunshine throughout this afternoon, throughout tomorrow morning, throughout tomorrow afternoon, and then finally later tomorrow night into early morning on Wednesday, we'll have some clouds in the forecast. These clouds not going to produce anything in the way of rain. And then it does look like the clouds are mainly of the thinner, higher level cloud cover nature right there around the lunchtime frame on Wednesday, not blocking too much sunshine. So as we close out your Wednesday, we're not going to really look at anything in the way of interrupting your image of the beautiful sunset that will ensue 1 hour past that 5 p.m. hour. I'm so used to putting a pause point on 5 p.m. and referring to it as sunset, but now the sunset going to be closer to 6 p.m. And we are still smooth sailing as we go overnight into early Thursday morning. So this is going to be one thing that you want to know throughout the rest of today. It is going to be mighty, mighty windy. I'm going to go home and I'm going to throw my beanie cap on because gusts up to 32, 33 miles per hour, maybe some isolated pockets of 35 to 40 mile per hour gusts. Like I said, I'm still kind of scratching my head why we didn't get a wind advisory issued for today, because these winds are getting into the threshold of where they can be quite impactful, especially given how dry of a forecast we are now going to have with that colder and drier air mass settling in. We hold on to the breeze into tomorrow morning. With how much temperatures are going to drop, even a light breeze, even some occasional gusts up to 15 miles per hour are going to result in some frigid feels like temperatures. And the breeze only builds back in as we go into the afternoon, still holding on to some gusty winds, but maybe not quite as gusty on Wednesday morning. And then Wednesday afternoon, it looks like the breeze is trying to finally break apart. So Wednesday should be the first at least tolerable feeling afternoon, but it is still going to be cold. It is the middle of winter after all, just not going to be as cold as what we have for the rest of today and we have for the rest of your Tuesday. So 32 degrees, 36 for feels like temperatures here in central Georgia this afternoon. Going to really struggle to get above that 32 degree mark in Macon. We see the numbers drop down as low as the lower teens right now, 11 degrees and 12 degrees for feels like temperatures in Macon and Dublin. But you see a 6 up here in Atlanta, feels like 7 degrees up in Athens, and some of that pink shade could creep down into north and northwestern central Georgia. I wouldn't doubt that some areas have the potential to drop down into the single digits for feels like temperatures tomorrow morning. Then tomorrow afternoon, not feeling too different than this afternoon is feeling, but then we go into Wednesday and your feels like temperatures are a little bit closer to what the actual temperature is, somewhere in the mid to maybe the upper 20s. And Wednesday afternoon, we finally see that green color return in a select few spots. So remember, green is going to be good on this graphic. That's going to be the first tolerable afternoon that we do have with maybe some feels like temperatures and some actual high temperatures, pretty close to the 50 degree mark. And then we drop the numbers back down to those frigid levels in the upper 20s as we go into early Thursday morning. So this is what you did see as of this morning, a cold weather advisory issued. That expired at 10 a.m. along with our winter weather advisory, along with our weather impact alerts. All those alerts I was telling you about this morning have come to a conclusion. But this is our next cold weather advisory, which will get going at 8 p.m. tonight. So right past dinner time, that's when the numbers are going to drop back down into some frigid cold levels. And in fact, all the way until 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning, we had the possibility. It was a very wide range given by the National Weather Service, wind chill values from -4 all the way up to 15 degrees, which is very, very chilly. But -4, we're not going to have numbers and feels like numbers that get down into the negatives. That is going to be for north and northwestern Georgia. So those higher elevations, the North Georgia mountains. Here in central Georgia, I think if you live in Monroe County, Upson County, Jasper, Jones, maybe up here in Bibb County, farther up to the north and the northwest, that's where you really have the potential to see some single-digit wind chill values. So a little bit colder than the rest of the bunch, but not to take away from the fact that everyone is going to be very, very cold As of yesterday afternoon, we only saw the cold weather advisory for northwestern central Georgia, and then we did see it extended for all of central Georgia, which I'm very thankful for because it's a bit misleading when you tell some people that, hey, you're in a cold weather advisory, but some other counties, you're not quite in a cold weather advisory. That's very misleading because everyone is going to be cold no matter what. This is just going to be a little bit colder than it normally is during the winter time frame. So over the next 3 days, your temperatures are kind of misleading for today and tomorrow. These numbers are going to feel a good deal colder than the morning low and the afternoon high temperature values that you do see. Wednesday afternoon, I do believe those numbers are pretty true to what they'll actually read. Maybe feeling a little bit colder on Wednesday morning, but then some near 50-degree high temperatures as we go into Wednesday afternoon as cloud cover decreases from sunrise all the way into sunset, which should finally be crystal clear. Afternoon high temperatures are a little bit closer to average by maybe just 10 degrees short of average. That's about the warmest that we are going to get throughout this week. So unfortunately, we are not feeling any sort of warmth whatsoever, and your morning low temperature values are going to fluctuate, maybe into the lower portion of the 20s. Now looking at this graphic, I did not realize how many 27s I did forecast for morning lows throughout this week, but apparently I did for not only this morning, but also Wednesday and going into Friday morning. So every other day it seems like they're going to have a 27-degree morning low temperature. All these numbers still a good deal below average of somewhere in the upper 30s this time of year. But then we go into the weekend, and I'm sure many of you have once again been looking on social media, been seeing some people post individual model runs about another winter weather system that could come in over the course of this weekend. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have much confidence in this whatsoever, which you may say, oh, Alex, you've been saying that about the last couple of systems a couple days out ahead of time. But this one I have the least amount of confidence in compared to the last two systems that we have seen. The European model says, okay, some moisture could clip us as we go into Friday night. And then the GFS model shows a couple of maybe spotty showers that could be of the frozen nature that try to clip us as we go into Saturday morning. Overall, there's not a lot of model agreement, and we're not really seeing the definitive coverage of those potential winter weather impacts like we did with these other systems, even a couple days out ahead of time. So what does look to happen is there will be a low pressure system that does form, and it's going to move out over towards the Atlantic, and it's going to create a wide radius in diameter of some precipitation out in the middle of the Atlantic, and I do imagine that's going to clip areas on the eastern coast of the United States, but it doesn't really look to have any impacts here in central Georgia as of right now. If things change, then of course we will continue to let you know, but I'm not even seeing the models agree on anything in the way of widespread precipitation or really anything even in the way of some spotty showers form. So I didn't even throw a rain chance on your 7-day forecast. I still think it's just going to be a stretch of uneventful but very, very cold weather that is going to settle in. It's a little bit more tolerable Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, but as that low pressure system does form, a frontal boundary is going to sweep through, and guess what? We're just going to reinforce the cold air that is in the forecast. We're dropping the numbers back down to pretty similar values that we do have for both today and tomorrow as we go into Saturday and Sunday. So outdoor plans right now, they are looking dry, so continue to keep those plans, but you're going to need all of the layers in the closet. You're going to need the long johns underneath. You're going to need the beanie. You're going to need the scarf because feels like numbers could very likely be much, much colder than some already high temperatures that are going to be nice and cold somewhere in the 40s. But the important thing is we continue to climb back above freezing temperature each and every day, even if it's going to be a window for a couple of hours. So those overnight and those early morning hours, that is going to be where your numbers are going to be below freezing for a consistent time frame over the course of this week. So maybe make sure that you're taking the proper precautions, trying to protect those pipes, make sure that you're bringing in your pets. If it's too cold for you outside, it's too cold for your furry friends, of course. And then I promise you, as we get into the middle of next week, we try to bring the numbers back up to average for around this time of year, which as a matter of fact is highs near the 60-degree mark. But right now, a lot of the extended models do show a warm up at least into the mid 50s, maybe the upper 50s as we go into the beginning, maybe even the middle portion of the work week next week. But we are ending January on a very frigid and a very cold note. Like I mentioned, this is the coldest air mass of the season so far in terms of the actual temperatures dropping down into the mid-teens and the feels like numbers when you factor in those winds that are going to make those numbers possibly even feel like the single digits tomorrow morning. So make sure that you are not venturing outside without those layerings on. And of course, make sure that you're starting the car up and cranking up the heat way ahead of time. So that's going to do it for your extended forecast. Like I said, very thankfully, we saw minimal impacts from this weekend's past system. It could have been a whole lot worse, but we can continue about our regular routine. And it is worth noting, I've seen a lot of you say, oh, we didn't get anything. We didn't get snow. Number one, we did not forecast snow whatsoever, and the impacts that we forecasted were only for a select few areas. We cover a lot of areas in central Georgia, not just a select few locations. So many areas didn't see anything, but some areas saw a little bit. We want to make sure that everyone does continue to stay updated. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.